Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Blue, and this will be a hopefully fairly short video for AHK for Turking level 101. This one's going to concentrate on the process by which we go about deciding how to write a script and what steps we take to do that. So this is something that I decided to make a video about after seeing multiple discussions of forum members trying to figure out how they get started actually writing a script. So that's what we're going to concentrate on. Now, in order to write a script, the first thing we need to do is explore what key presses we need to actually do on our keyboard to complete this hit without using our mouse to click around. So typically the first thing you're going to do if you are just using an AHK is you need to focus the iframe. And you do this by simply clicking inside the outframe. The iframe is this secondary box inside the greater mturk window here that you can see. So this is the iframe. This is where all the work is done, is in here. You usually have a lot of user scripts that can focus the iframe for you, but if you are starting out with AHK, there's a very good possibility that you're not going to have user scripts all the time. So you need to make sure that you are focusing the iframe yourself. And the reason this is important is because when you focus the iframe, every key press that you make afterwards is sent to the iframe and not to the greater mturk window itself. So we want to make sure that our AHK script is sending its own key presses to the iframe and not to the window itself. So we click inside of it first. This just makes sure that this iframe is focused. And if we scroll down to where the actual work is down here, we can see we've got some sheep or whatever. And we won't discuss how to actually do this hit because that doesn't matter for this video. What we're going to talk about is how we actually do this work on a keyboard. And if we scroll down a little bit more, we see that we're going to be making a decision between model 1 and model 2. And so if I hit tab, we see model 1, the radio for model 1 gets selected. If we hit tab again, we see that it highlights the submit button down here, which is not what we want. So if we hit shift tab, we go backwards and we see that we go back to the bottom of the radio button element. So if we switch over to this second tab that I have up here and we scroll down again, we can see what happens if I hit tab again. We'll click inside first and then hit tab. We've selected model 1. Now if I hit space, we can see that we've now actually filled in the radio button for model number 1, meaning that we've made a choice. And if I hit down, we can see that we have changed that choice to model number 2. So, and then obviously afterwards we would hit tab to highlight the submit button and we would submit. So we can do this entire hit inside of the iframe using just our keyboard, except when we need to focus the iframe. So I'm going to go ahead and make decisions on these two, and we'll start again with fresh ones. So what I'll do is I'll just select number 1. I'll tab down to submit. I'll hit enter, and then I'll tab over to the other browser tab very quickly. We can see up here that it was submitting while I was doing that. And I just did that basically so that you don't see a lot of the other information flash up there. Nobody needs to know my real name or what I'm wearing right now, do you? So we take a look at this one, and I think selection number 1 is again really good for this one. So I'm just going to go ahead and do the same thing again, and we can see that it loads up. Now we've got 2 new hits here, and what we're going to do is we are going to start writing our script. So I have down here a window for writing our script, and as you can see I use T for auto hotkey, and it's basically a small development environment for writing your scripts, and it does a lot of really nice things. Like it colorizes the different elements of your script so that it makes it much more readable, and it actually does item suggestion for you too as you type, so it can help speed you up quite a bit. Plus it also shows you functions within AHK that you might not even know exist. So back to what we're actually doing here. The first step to writing your script was identifying the key presses that we needed to use. And we know that we need to click inside the iframe, then we need to tab one time down to the radio element, and then we need to either press space to select model number 1, or we need to press down to go to model number 2. And that is the two basic decision points that we are going to code into our script first. So we'll select the number 1 for this. Actually, let's use control 1. And what this is telling the script is that when I press control 1, control plus 1, the first hotkey in this script is going to actuate. And we'll just add a comment after that. We'll say that it is going to select model 1. And the reason why we comment it is because we want to make sure that we remember what our hotkeys are doing and why. And leaving comments in a good way, it's basically you just put in a semicolon and then start typing afterwards, and you leave in notes that don't actually affect the script itself. So you can see there's some commented stuff up here as well. So now we are going to type in the actual keystrokes that we need to perform to complete the work in this hit. So number 1 is going to select model 1. What were the keystrokes that we needed to do that? Well, first we needed to send a click. And as you can see, I can't type. We're sending a click. So basically, you've got the send command that tells it to send some sort of input, and inside the brackets is telling it inside this bracket is the name of a key and not a word. There's an explicit difference between click with nothing around it. That's telling it to send the letters C-L-I-C-K, whereas when you put it in brackets, you are telling it to send the button that AHK calls click. In this case, click is the left mouse button. Now, one of the caveats to using this is that the click is sent wherever your mouse is at that exact moment. There's other ways to focus your iframe with auto hotkey, but this is kind of the simplest one that we're going to explore at this time. So when you're using this technique, you need to make sure that you are aware at all times where your mouse is, and that you keep it inside the iframe while you're working, so that it actually, the click is going to the right spot. And actually, with a very simple batch like this, I will typically just put my mouse somewhere and then I'll never touch it again, so it'll always be in the right spot as I'm working. But you can send coordinates to tell it to click in a certain spot, or you can use a script to focus the iframe for you. However you want to accomplish that. There's multiple different ways, as there always is with coding. Find which one works best for you. This is a really simple one for users who would be wanting and needing to watch a video of this type. This would be one very simplistic way to get it done. So make sure you are always aware of where your mouse pointer is, even though you are only using key presses for the rest of this script, because it matters. So afterwards, I'm going to add a sleep in here. And what a sleep timer does is it tells the script to stop running for however many milliseconds until that time is elapsed, and then continue on from there. And the reason why I do this, it absolutely is not necessary, but you'll find when you are using browsers like Chrome and, well, Firefox, anytime you are really running a lot of tabs and you're doing a lot of quick refreshes, you'll start seeing latency in between the time that you press the button and the time that the browser actually visually registers that key press. And so if you have an older computer, or you've got a massive memory leak going on, or whatever your problem might be, if there's a latency between the time in which the key press is sent and the browser registers it, sometimes if your script is going too fast to account for that latency, you can actually lose key presses in that latency, and that can end up in submitting bad work. So I always add it in there. It absolutely isn't necessary, and a lot of times I don't need it, but this is sleeping for 50 milliseconds, which is a fraction of a second. It doesn't matter too much to you, but it matters to your browser. So the next key press after that is going to send tab, right? After we clicked inside the iframe, the next thing we wanted to do was send tab, and this is going to tell AHK to tab down one time. In this case, it's going to tab down to our radio button element lower in the iframe. So after we've tabbed down, we're going to tell it to sleep again, and then we're going to tell it send space. And if we remember, that was everything we needed to do to select model number 1. So we're going to enter a return command here to tell that hotkey that after it sends space, it doesn't need to do anything else. And it can just stop the process right there instead of waiting for more commands to come in. So we need to add our second hotkey here, and we're going to use Control 2 for this one, meaning anytime we press Control 2, it's going to tell it to actuate. Now there's one thing you can do to make sure that your hotkeys only actuate when you tell them to, and that is to add the $sign in front. And the $sign is an operand that tells the hotkey to only actuate when the physical buttons are pressed. I don't typically use this because I like telling my hotkeys to actuate other hotkeys sometimes. And it's really useful to allow AHK to control other AHK scripts, but that's in the future for you. The only time you need to worry about that ability is if you're writing a script where you're going to be sending numbers and you decided to make your hotkey just the number 1 without a modifier key attached to it like control. So if your worker ID included the number 1 somewhere in it, every time you told auto hotkey to send that, or you pressed the number 1, it would try to actuate that hotkey. So that can affect your typing if you're writing something, or if you're trying to input your worker ID, you could end up submitting a hit accidentally, or a survey or whatnot. So try to remember to use your modifier keys if you can, and if that's possible for you. If not, you can do something like, if you don't use your numpad very often, you could tell this to go off of numpad 1 instead. And you can use all of the numpad buttons the same way you would use control 1. And the only time it would actuate is when the numpad button was pushed, which is explicitly different to AHK than the number 1. Okay, but we're going to stick with control 1 because that's what I like and that's how I roll. So we'll go down here and we'll comment number 2 and say that it is going to select model 2. And the keystrokes for this are going to be mostly the same. We'll send a click where our mouse pointer is at to tell it to focus the iframe. Then we're going to sleep for 50. We'll send a tab to tab down to the radio element. We'll sleep for another 50 milliseconds, and then we'll send down. And you can see what we're doing here is we're skipping one keystroke by going down, and we can see this actually works. If we go to our hit window here and we click inside, we hit tab, it goes down to model number 1. And if I just press down without pressing space, you'll see that it automatically selects number 2 for us. So we can save one keystroke there. If you're ever working with your keyboard, that's one way to save yourself a little bit of time. It doesn't matter a whole lot with AHK, but it's one thing you can do to reduce the number of keystrokes. And always, the more moving parts you have in a script, the more that can go wrong. So if you can skip one keystroke, you are essentially mitigating a very, very small percentage chance that something could go wrong. So we'll go ahead and we'll skip over to this one right here, and we'll come back to our script that we're writing, and we will enter return, because as far as we're concerned, that number 2 hotkey has done all of the work that it's going to do. So I'm going to go ahead and make a decision on these 2 scripts. on these two hotkeys after I start this script up and save it, and we'll see how it works. So I'll save it, I'll pause the video here, and I'll be back with fresh hits in just a moment. Alright, now we've got two fresh new hits that haven't been touched. If we tab back and forth between the two screens, we can see they're fresh and ready to be worked on. We'll bring up our script here to show that it hasn't been changed any at all. And if we bring up the icons, we can see screencast.ahk is running, which is the name of our script right here. So let's see if it works. If we press Control 1, we should see it jump down to model number 1 and highlight that radio button. And if we hit Control 2, we should see the same happen, only to model number 2 instead of model number 1. So let's see. If I hit Control 1, we see it jump all the way down. We see that the radio button for model number 1 has been selected. And if I switch over to this next tab here, I can just scroll down this time and show you that it still works. If I hit Control 2, we saw that model number 1 was very briefly highlighted just before it pressed the down button to select model number 2. So you can see these actual keystrokes happening as you actuate your script. I'll go ahead and submit these two scripts, and then we'll start doing some fun stuff. Okay, so now what we're going to explore are more advanced techniques, just a couple of more advanced techniques to increase our efficiency as workers. I've seen it numerous times on the forum where people were arguing about how to make these scripts more efficient after you already have it selecting the radio buttons for you, and there are a lot of ways to make it more efficient, and anyone who says it isn't true simply isn't creative enough. So let's take a look at a few things we can do to have our AHK script make us more efficient. We're going to add a third hotkey here. We're going to make it Control 3, and this hotkey is going to submit for us, and we'll also have it tab to the next browser tab. Very simply, what it is going to do is it is going to submit the hit for us after we have made our selection, and then it is going to flip to the next tab using the Windows hotkey for browser tabbing. And if we come over here to this window and I press Control Tab, we see that it automatically flips between these two browser tabs for me. You can see the address up there is changing to show that I'm flipping back and forth between these two, and my mouse cursor is over here. I'm doing it with the keyboard, and we can do that with AHK too. So we know that after we've made our suggestion with either hotkey 1 or hotkey 2, that we will be sitting at the radio element down here. So let's see if we've made, looks like model number 2 is the right one this time. So if I have model number 2 selected and I hit tab, you can see the submit button down here highlight. And then if I were to hit space or hit enter, it would submit that hit. We can reflect that in AHK by simply reflecting those same key presses. So we've already got the iframe focused by our first two hotkeys, so we don't need to do that. What we're going to do is we're going to tell AutoHotkey to tab down from the radio element to the submit button, have it sleep for 50 milliseconds, and then send space. And space will actually press that submit button for us and submit the hit. And we could stop there, but I'm a fancy kind of guy, and I think we'd like to do some more things to make this script just slightly more efficient than what it is running right away. So if we take a look, if we go to this second one that's fresh, and we take a look at the actual hit, the way it's set up, we've got all this vertical space here that is directions repeated over and over, and that's a good thing. It lets us know what it is we're supposed to be doing in this hit, but it also slows us down once we know the rules of the hit. Maybe we don't want to see this every time. Well, you can get rid of this with a user script, but you don't have to write a user script. If you've got AHK and it's all you know how to use, you can still move this out of the way for ourselves. If we take a look, we use the scroll wheel to scroll up and down. We can do the same thing with AutoHotkey. If we go down here, we know that if we use the scroll wheel, we can get it down here. And we can do the same thing with AutoHotkey. So how are we going to do that? Well, there's a button in AutoHotkey called wheel up and wheel down. And it is literally the name for the movement of the scroll wheel on your mouse. So we can add another sleep in here. Oh, actually first we need to tab it. I guess I got ahead of myself. So if we sleep 100 milliseconds is usually a good enough time for most people for their eye to visually recognize just before it submits that the correct button had been selected. So that's just a little fail-safe. If something did go wrong with your script, that little bit of extra time to actually be able to visually discern that the right selection was made as it was submitting is just enough to give you a little bit of a fail-safe. So we're going to do that, and then we're going to tell it to send control tab. And control tab, like I said earlier, is the Windows hotkey for switching between tabs. So what we've essentially done here is now hotkey number 3 is tabbing down to the submit button, then it is pressing the submit button, and then it waits for 100 milliseconds, and then it will tab to the next browser tab here. And we will go ahead and further increase our efficiency by telling it to sleep for another 100 milliseconds, giving it an extended time to make sure that it actually renders the next tab. And if you have a slower computer or you're experiencing a heavy memory leak and you haven't, taken care of that yet, you might need to give it a little bit more time to fully render the new tab before you send more commands to it. We're going to tell it to send a wheel command to scroll it down. And I'm looking at this vertical space here. I think that's about 10 or 11. We can actually count that. If we go up to the very top, we can actually count how many times it'll have to be done to scroll down all the way. So we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. Look at that, ladies and gentlemen. I called it on the first time. You can tell that I've been doing this for entirely too long. So we're going to write wheel down. You can see we've also got wheel right and wheel up and wheel left in there too. So this is one of the reasons why T for AutoHotkey is really nice. It shows you commands that you might not already know. And it offers autocomplete. If I hit enter right there, it'll complete it for me, and I can tell it to do it 11 times. Close the bracket, and it should be good. So now our third hotkey is going to tab down after we've made our selection to the submit button, submit the hit, and then immediately tab to the next browser tab and scroll down for us. And let's see if that actually works. We'll actually do some work here. I'll pause the video, submit these 2 hits, and then we'll actually do some work using the script that we've created here, and we'll see whether it works or not. Okay, we've got 2 fresh new hits up here that haven't had any key presses done at all, including we haven't focused the iframe. You can see here that our script has not changed from when I last edited it. And make sure whenever you do make changes in your scripts that you come down to the taskbar down here. You right click on it and you tell it to reload the script. Anytime you make changes and save them, you need to tell the process to update itself to include those changes in the actual running version of the script. So now that we've got this going, we should be able to come in here and see that it'll work. Now remember, if we press Ctrl 1, it's going to click inside the iframe, tab down, and hit space to select model number 1. If we hit Ctrl 2 for our second hotkey, it's going to click inside the iframe wherever our pointer is, tab down to the radio element, and press down to select model number 2. And then we do a second key press that's going to actuate hotkey number 3, which is going to tab down from there to the submit button, submit that hit, and then tab to the next browser tab and scroll down for us. If we've written everything correctly, we should have a fairly efficient process for doing these hits, and we'll actually do a couple of these so that we can see whether it's working or not. So for the first one, we need to scroll down for ourselves. So we'll scroll down, and looking at this one right here, I think number 2 should be good. So if I press Control 2, we should see it jump down very quickly to Model 2, highlight it, submit the script, and then you'll see it flip over to the next one. It'll happen very quickly because my timers are very, very fast. You can see how quick and efficient this method really is. We'll just go ahead and do a little bit of work, make our decisions like we normally would, and you can see we're plowing right through this hit very quickly. We just submitted several of them while I was talking and didn't take away from the quality of work that we were submitting in any way, while still increasing our efficiencies. I hope you've found this video helpful. I hope it's taught you something, and I hope it allows you to take your scripting a little bit further. Maybe you can use it in other things beyond just mturk. This is Blue signing off. Have a great day.